The main corridor of the airport was buzzing, suitcase wheels scraping the floor, voices mixing with tinny announcements, kids hopping between lines. In the middle of the commotion, Colonel Carson Bailey moved with a steady stride, dress uniform spotless, each step echoing like a ceremonial drum. What weighed on him wasn't the medals shining under the white lights, but the silent commitment to those who had gone. Soldier Andrew Carter's casket, 21, waited out on the tarmac, wrapped in the flag he'd sworn to defend. Bailey carried a mission no order could cancel: bring the young man back home. He reached the airline counter, handed over his papers, and kept his gaze steady. The clerk typed, hesitated, called a co-worker. Murmurs, blue screens reflected on tense faces, the line growing behind him. The colonel held still, sculpted by discipline. When the agent returned, she wore a brittle smile, the kind that comes before bad news. "Sir, there's an inconsistency in the system. Your boarding is blocked." The words hung like a muffled alarm. The flow around him kept moving, but for Bailey, everything went quiet. Between him and the route back to Andrew now stood an invisible, bureaucratic, yet unbreakable wall. And the clock was ticking. Every minute of waiting pulled a son farther from his homeland and tested the promise that no soldier would be left behind. Bailey let out his breath slowly. He'd crossed war zones and offices where every word was a trap, but that check-in counter felt more hostile than all of them. With the paperwork between his fingers, he stated, "I'm transporting a soldier's remains. All the paperwork is in order." The employee looked away as if the floor had suddenly become fascinating. "I understand, sir, but there's a security protocol." Protocol. Bailey kept his voice firm, not defiant. Behind him, the line crept forward a few inches, thick with whispers. Instead of backing off, he planted his feet on the polished floor. The standoff drew the supervisor, a guy in his 40s with a loose tie and tired eyes. He crossed his arms. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but some policies aren't negotiable." "I've done this detail before," Bailey replied. "No regulation stops me from boarding. If there's another reason, say it." The supervisor cleared his throat, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "It's just an extra security measure, nothing personal." Nothing personal. Almost funny. Bailey tightened his jaw, keeping the calm many expected to crack. He felt the eyes around him, the woman in a red blazer whispering to her husband, the student frowning at staff badges, the executive checking his watch. The air grew dense, full of unspoken questions. Even so, he didn't take a step back. Bailey was still trying to figure out the roadblock when a clear voice cut through the tense terminal. "Any problem with his military authorization?" The question came from a man a few spots back, pushing 60, face lined by time, a Marine Corps cap almost shading his determined eyes. A veteran. The once bored line lifted their heads. The supervisor cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "It's not about authorization. It's just protocol." The veteran let out a short, humorless laugh. "Protocol? I've been through this checkpoint more times than I can count, and I've never seen protocol keep a soldier from taking one of ours home." The comment sent sparks flying. Murmurs swelled like a wave. Phone screens shot up to capture every detail. The atmosphere shifted almost visibly. The agent who'd blocked the boarding dropped her eyes to the monitor, as though the pixels could give her cover. Bailey stayed motionless, chin high, in a stance that said he wouldn't give an inch. Feeling the weight of the stairs and the risk of that spark turning into a fire, the supervisor shook his head, rubbed his temples, and in a whisper that sounded defeated promised, "I'll check on something." He hurried off while the line, now silently expectant, kept their cameras trained on the scene. The veteran folded his arms. Bailey fixed his gaze on the spot where the supervisor had vanished, as if sheer will could speed up the outcome. There, in a corridor lit by signs and rumblings of indignation, the story refused to retreat, and everyone knew that moment was far from over. The usual hum of the terminal was replaced by a watchful, tense hush. Passengers weren't checking watches or talking about vacations anymore. They formed a half-circle of wide eyes and raised phones. Sergeant Bailey, frozen in front of the counter, felt every second scrape by. To his left, a woman in a denim jacket shook her head and whispered to her husband, "This isn't right." Farther ahead, a guy in a hoodie fired off messages reporting every detail. It was the worst possible showcase for the airline. The supervisor had vanished, a sign he was fishing for an excuse or hoping the mood would cool. Neither was going to happen. "Sir." Bailey turned his head just enough. The voice came from a young woman barely over 20. She held up her phone like it was a smoking gun, trembling hands, steady eyes. "I don't want to invade your privacy, but I need to confirm. Did they block your trip?" "Yes," he answered without taking his eyes off the agent. The young woman blinked, bit her lip, and flipped her screen. "I'm live streaming. People need to see this." As if a floodgate had opened, other cameras came up. An older man in a baseball cap, a few steps ahead, raised his own phone and declared, "This is outrageous. He's escorting a soldier who fell in the line of duty." The automatic doors slid open at the back. The crowd, now turned into witnesses, held its breath waiting for the next move. From the end of the line, a passenger raised her arm toward the counter. "Hey, can somebody tell me why he can't get through?" Till then, the murmur had run low, but the question lit up the concourse. The whisper turned into loud chatter, humming over the loudspeakers. The employee backed up to her monitor, fingers frozen, eyes searching for an exit beyond the cameras. At that moment, the Marine stepped forward, voice flat. "I've served for years and never thought I'd see an American soldier, carrying a comrade's remains, stopped like this." The terminal plunged into heavy silence. Even the recorded announcement sounded distant. The serviceman squared his shoulders. "This shames everyone here." A key clicked under the agent's trembling fingers. The supervisor was still missing. A baby whimpered in a stroller, but the mother didn't move. She stared at her phone with a hard look. Someone in the middle of the line said, "It's already online." Bailey stayed still. He didn't have to do anything else. The world was watching now. Tension thickened the air as the airline staff traded blank looks. Screens flashed, streams went up, hashtags were born. The guy in the hoodie, still glued to his phone, whistled. "Dude, it's everywhere." Bailey didn't smile. He knew the ending was still far off, but seeing the agent's pale face told him she knew it too. The woman in the denim jacket stared at her phone and gasped. "My God," she whispered to her husband. "It's already on Facebook." The gray-haired Marine beside her grumbled, pulling his phone from his pocket. "They have no idea the storm they've kicked up." At that moment, the lobby loudspeaker crackled. "Attention passengers, due to unforeseen circumstances, Flight 237 to Phoenix is delayed. We apologize for the inconvenience." Few reacted. Almost everyone kept their eyes on the soldier standing at the gate. The serviceman on duty had been blocked. 60 seconds later, near the windows, a young woman raised her phone. "He's on Twitter already." On the screen, in big letters, "Boarding denied to a black colonel escorting a fallen soldier's remains. Is this how we treat our heroes? Let him fly." The retweet counter climbed like a speedometer flying downhill. Soon came a tweet from a veterans NGO. "We're following the disgraceful incident at Name Airport. Soldiers deserve respect. Action will be taken." The buzz spread like a fuse. The airline had lost control of the narrative. At the counter, the agent took a deep breath, feeling the cameras aimed at her, turned, and vanished behind the frosted glass door. She wouldn't come back with explanations, but with containment manuals. Bailey, adjusting his worn cap, recognized the scene. He'd been in places where the people in charge realized too late they picked the wrong opponent. Bailey kept his face impassive. This moment wasn't about him, but about Private First Class Andrew Carter, a kid who dreamed of hearing a welcome home echo through the lobby. The mission was still open, and the crowd felt it. The terminal, under blinking signs, held its breath, waiting for the next move. The supervisor returned, escorting a man in a navy blue suit, badge gleaming in his pocket. He walked with short, precise steps, the stride of someone who puts out fires. Stopping at the counter, he measured the sea of raised phones, searched Bailey's eyes for a truce, and cleared his throat. "Colonel, there was a glitch in our system. We apologize and we're expediting your boarding." Glitch sounded like code for "we got caught," and Bailey spoke that dialect fluently. He let the silence work. The rep shifted his weight from one foot to the other as the buzz grew. Then Bailey said, controlled, just low enough to make the crowd lean in, "A mistake, is that it?" "Yes, sir, an unfortunate error, never intentional." The man hurried, straightening his tie. Someone snorted. The Marine shook his head. "We'd like to escort you to the gate now, with a seat in business class," he finished, as though comfort could fix the damage. It was too late for damage control. The damage was already racing across live social media feeds, and the whole terminal, holding its breath, wanted to see how it ended. Bailey lifted his chin while the employee in the blue jacket, sweating, kept calling him Colonel, trying to sound steady. The clerk pretended to reread the computer screen, unable to face him after brushing him off minutes earlier. "We appreciate your understanding and we're going to fix this right now," the airline rep said in a rush. Bailey took a slow breath and surveyed the lobby, dotted with raised phones. "If nobody were filming," he asked, low but clear, "would I still be standing here?" Silence fell. Even the PA system seemed to pause. The man in the tie choked on his own hesitation. From somewhere in the line, a quiet, "He's right," sparked a murmuring ripple. "No need to explain," Bailey went on calmly. "This isn't about apologies. It's about owning the consequences." Heads nodded and the buzz took on the tone of shared disappointment. Authority slipped through the rep's fingers and he straightened up in one last attempt. "Colonel, we'll get you on your flight immediately." Before the sentence finished, a security agent appeared, phone extended, eyes alarmed. "Sir, you'd better see this." The agent swiped the screen and the rep went pale. Bailey folded his arms. From that moment, the scene was no longer his. "Something happened?" someone ventured, breaking the tension that now hung like steel. The silence that followed said everything, while the cameras kept rolling. The rep stayed quiet, and Bailey understood instantly. The incident had already left the airport. A news site had posted the headline, "U.S. Army Colonel blocked from boarding while escorting fallen soldier. Airline scrambles to explain." Beneath it, a video of the terminal was racking up real-time views. Phone back in hand, the employee drew a long breath before facing Bailey. "We deeply regret this. We plan to issue an official statement." Bailey raised a hand, cutting him off. "The public already knows the truth." Across the counter, the rep pressed his lips together. Eyes turned to the officer and phone cameras flashed. Bailey kept his voice steady. "I'm not asking for first class or special perks. I demand respect, for me and for the soldier I'm escorting." A murmur ran through the line, followed by the rep's stiff nod, the gesture of someone who knows there's nothing left to offer. "Understood, sir." The Marine a few steps away let out a quiet sound of approval. Bailey adjusted his cap, felt the symbolic weight of the casket that hadn't even arrived yet, and ended, "Then let me finish this mission." The terminal seethed. Every new notification reinforced the sense that the airline was losing control of the story. Passengers kept recording, reporters tried to push through. The place felt like a press conference no one had invited. The consequences, though, had barely begun. The buzz died when a man in a dark blue suit stepped through the automatic doors. His firm posture carried the authority of someone who doesn't ask permission. He wasn't airline staff or civilian security. The badge on his chest revealed his rank. The crowd parted before he spoke. He held out his hand to Bailey. "Colonel, I'm Major James Martin, Department of the Army. We got your call." The handshake was brief and solid. No one questioned the speed of the response. Soldiers look after their own. Martin turned to the rep. His voice was controlled but razor sharp. "From now on, we're taking over. Colonel Bailey and the remains of Private First Class Andrew Carter will not travel on a commercial flight." The rep swallowed hard. "Yes, sir, we were arranging—" "A way to make the problem disappear," Martin interrupted, polite yet unyielding. He turned back to Bailey. "The Pentagon has assigned a military jet. The crew is already waiting on the tarmac." A hum swept the hall. Glances traded curiosity and respect. In seconds, the Army had taken charge of the civilian space. Bailey exhaled, not in relief but in alignment with the new plan. He dipped his head, accepting the logistics. "Understood, Major." Martin kept his gaze on the rep until the man stepped back, as if sealing an unbreakable clause. "This will be fixed." The sentence didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like the promise of someone who refuses to back down. Bailey, his pulse still hammering, turned to the Marine who'd witnessed everything. "Thanks, brother," the service member replied with a quick nod. "Among our own, nobody gets left hanging." Before moving on, Bailey scanned the concourse. He saw passengers standing up, voices breaking the script of the lines, people refusing to let the story be buried. He straightened his collar, squared his shoulders, and walked, not toward the gate, but toward something that demanded far more than just boarding. For the airline, though, the disaster clock had only just started ticking. Executives bet that a few apologies, a short statement, maybe a note from the CEO would calm the storm. They miscalculated. Within hours, TV news gave the story prime time. Veterans groups demanded answers, and lawmakers started calling for accountability in public. The hurricane leapt from headlines to the market. By week's end, the stock was tanking as if weighed down by every silenced voice. A boycott hashtag was climbing the trending topics, and customers were turning social media into an open courtroom, asking, sharing, pressuring. First came the furious headlines, then the social media barrage, and finally the weight of the law. Veterans and reservists associations filed a formal complaint against the company, accusing it of discriminating against those who chose to serve. Cornered, the CEO went on camera, called the mess a sad misunderstanding, and suspended the execs involved. But the gesture came too late. The damage was done. Meanwhile, far from the spotlight, Colonel Bailey carried out his real mission. He escorted Private First Class Andrew Carter to his family's reunion, standing firm beside them during the final tribute. He wasn't after flashes or hashtags. He wanted respect. And that fight isn't over yet. Respect isn't a promo giveaway. It shouldn't depend on going viral or an occasional online outcry. It should be the rule, period. The people in that airport, the Marine who stepped in, the passengers who recorded, the ones who refused to stay silent, showed the power of a crowd that won't normalize injustice. When voices join forces, there's no safe corner for anyone trying to belittle those who serve. If you stand for accountability and honor, let your voice ring out now. Silence builds dark corridors where stories like this replay. Next time, there might not be a camera to capture it. Thanks for sticking with us. If this message resonated with you, share it, hit like and subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means the world to us. See you next time.